So, good morning. As you see, there's a lot of people distracted. There's a lot of weird, interesting, and tragic stuff going on in this country. And as you know, I tend to stay away from the political stuff, even when the political stuff is caused by medical stuff, like COVID-19 and now some other distractions, major racial unrest. Today we're going to be talking about, can a mask really reduce coronavirus transmission? On Friday we'll talk about COVID-19 in the brain, and then we'll get back to the to our regular Wednesday YouTube live events. As you know, we've incorporated coronavirus, but everything's not about coronavirus. There's a lot of other things going on in the world of health. For example, metformin recall. Now that's perking up a lot of people's ears. We'll talk about that in just a minute. Before we do, again, just previous topics: antibody cocktails for treating coronavirus, statin therapy and coronavirus, surveillance and privacy in the time of COVID-19, the impact of COVID-19 on telemedicine. Some of our more popular ones were the coronavirus mutation that took over day 2 of the New York outbreak, the lifestyle and supplements and treatments, all focused on coronavirus. Again, coronavirus is a big deal. It's killing a lot of people. But as we've said, and we try to show on each of our videos on the intro, it's still not killing as many people as prediabetes, mostly. Heart attack and stroke. And that's something we've grown used to. Again, depending on how you count the numbers. If you just count the U.S. military deaths in Vietnam, we have a Vietnam every 2 weeks. If you count the military, the civilian deaths in Vietnam and the other countries' military deaths, then it's a couple of months. Every couple of months we have a Vietnam in terms of the number of deaths that happen from heart attack and stroke, over 80% of which are happening because of mostly undiagnosed insulin resistance. I had a patient the past couple of days who's getting started with us. She was saying in the very beginning, she was very excited and proud to report to me that she had no blood sugar problems. And I said, great, let's make sure we document that. She sent a fasting blood glucose back of over 130 that I just saw this morning. So that meets one of the criteria for full-blown or frank type 2 diabetes. It's an unrecognized epidemic, and it is what's killing us. Whether the final straw event is COVID-19 infection or a stroke or a heart attack or kidney failure, still, it's chronic diseases that are killing us, the vast majority of which are being driven by undiagnosed resistance to insulin. So let's get to the next phase. I mentioned a teaser a minute ago about metformin. The FDA has alerted patients and healthcare professionals to nitrosamine impurity findings. Now, how bad is that? I just put out again a teaser to Dave Murphy was doing some comments before the video. Yes, they found some nitrosamine impurities. They've asked for a voluntary recall. They're getting it. Now, here's the good news. It's on some extended release products. They haven't found it in any regular metformin. The vast majority of the prescriptions of metformin that I have done have been for plain old metformin. One of the reasons is it's cheap. It's just dirt cheap. There was a time when several of the large pharmacies were giving metformin away for $0 and zero copay, because it was an inducement to get people to come in to fill their other scripts where they could make money at their pharmacy. So plain old regular metformin is dirt cheap. Extended release, not so much. Some of them have been some of the most expensive drugs you find in formularies. So we're sending some information out to our patients. We're focusing on getting some of that, making folks are aware. Make sure that folks are aware. And if you have any questions, you want to talk with us about it, 859-721-1414. That's 859-721-1414. Again, starting next week, we go back to Wednesday. On Friday, we're going to talk about COVID-19 and the brain. As I mentioned, insulin resistance, the unrecognized, unappreciated pandemic of prediabetes is really what's killing us. And unfortunately, it's been documented multiple times. Your typical, over 2/3 of primary care doctors, internists, family practitioners, OBGYN docs who are doing primary care, these docs just don't recognize early prediabetes. Like the patient that I just mentioned earlier, consistently get messages back from their docs saying you're fine, when in fact we find out that not only do they have early prediabetes, they have full-blown frank diabetes based on some standard numbers. They just didn't look. So don't let that happen to you. That's what causes plaque, and plaque causes heart attack and stroke. Now, can you do that cost effectively? A lot of people complain about our prices. We don't accept insurance because insurance would give us about $100 for our typical activity, which is over about an hour, hour and a half of my time, plus 6 to 8 hours of Michelle's time. And that doesn't even get into our overhead. So we can't take those kind of losses and make up for it with volume. So we do charge more for routine evaluations. But given all that feedback and given our desire to make services available, state-of-the-art services available to folks that don't understand why they might need to pay more and to get better care, we've got services that focus on, number one, issues where docs, filling in the gaps where, again, your typical primary care doc doesn't understand prediabetes. So we have what we call webinars. There's webinar programs. We have content up front, videos which help you show what you and your doc might be missing. We provide lab orders where you go get the appropriate labs to find out just what's going on with your carb metabolism. And again, very, very affordable, $179, $499, depending on whether or not you get your labs with us. CIMT webinar, we've been talking about that. Nobody understands what a CIMT webinar is unless you've been following this channel. So what we're calling it is Got Plaque. So we're opening it up to people that have had stress tests. So here's the thing. As you know, it's plaque that causes heart attack and stroke. Your body attacks plaque just like your body attacks your joints if you have rheumatoid arthritis, or your body attacks your intestines if you have inflammatory bowel disease. What causes heart attack and stroke is your body, your immune system attacking plaque in your artery walls. So you need to know if you've got plaque. Unfortunately, the most common way of finding out, do I have plaque, is the worst way. You go to your doc runs a questionnaire, the Framingham. Framingham is good. It's a great place to do research, but it's not the best way to find out if you have plaque. Then almost everybody in terms of the medical community will not stop with the Framingham. If there's any concern about plaque, they do a stress test. Hey, doc, can we do a stress test? I had a family member die with a heart attack or have a heart attack. Here's the problem with a stress test. 50% occlusion, 50% of loss of blood flow is required before you're going to see a positive stress test. 2/3 of heart attacks occur in people that have less than 50% occlusion. So there's got to be a better way, right? Yes, there is. And that's what the CIMT or the Got Plaque webinar is all about. We've a perennially popular topic is supplements. We've got a webinar with Michelle has developed on supplements, same kind of thing. We've got subscription plans, which again, we've set up for folks. Folks have begun signing up for that. It's a popular way to start getting state-of-the-art preventive care instead of waiting till your disease happens and then hoping you can do something for it. We've mentioned the book. I've had several conversations with a gentleman that's owned a book development company in the past. He's started to take a look at some excerpts from this book, and it's created a lot of interest. Again, we will keep you posted on the book and the publication. Now, let's get started with the program for today, and that is, will masks actually help slow down coronavirus transmission? Before we do, Aspen, if you could give us the water ball. So you don't have to tell me that the Western and the Eastern world have been in conflict over whether or not it makes sense to wear a mask. You remember I worked from 2000 to 2009, 2010 with Toyota. And as a part of that, I had several trips to Japan. And as you see, it's a part of the culture in the East to wear these masks. It's never been a part of the culture in the West to wear these masks. And you have to wonder, okay, is it unnecessary? Why the difference? Well, let's get into that. Obviously, the coronavirus pandemic has raised a lot of questions in that area. In previous months, there's been conflicting information from World Health bodies concerning masks. The WHO has questioned mask effectiveness outside of a medical setting. Then governments, including the US and UK, initially urged citizens to leave those masks alone, leave them for healthcare workers. But then they made a U-turn and said, you know what? All of us should be wearing them. So why is this happening? There's a new study now that gives weight to wearing a mask, reducing virus transmission drastically. Experiments by a team in Hong Kong found that the coronavirus transmission rate via respiratory droplets or airborne particles dropped by as much as 75% when surgical masks are worn. 75%. The findings implied to the world and the public is that the effectiveness of mask wearing against the coronavirus pandemic is huge, said Dr. Wen Kwok-Young, a leading microbiologist from Hong Kong University, on May 17th. And this came from a CNBC publication. Wearing a mask can reduce coronavirus transmission by 75%, according to a new Hong Kong study. Researchers used hamsters in 2 cages. Now, wait a minute. Hamsters? Why not humans? We'll talk about that in just a minute. One group of hamsters infected with COVID-19 and the other healthy. The masks were used like curtains to protect healthy hamster cages from airborne exposure to the virus. Well, doesn't that imply some questions about fit? Yes, it does. And again, we can cover that later. The hamsters have very similar enzyme receptors to humans, the ACE receptors. That's why they were chosen as the test animals. 52 hamsters were used. And in our hamster experiment, here's a quote from Wynn. In our hamster experiment, it shows very clearly that if infected hamsters or humans, especially asymptomatic or symptomatic ones, put on masks, they actually do protect other people. That's the strongest result we showed here, said Wynn. Transmission can be reduced by 50% percentage points when masks are used, especially when masks are worn by infected individuals. And then again, you can start getting into some arguments about 50% versus 30% versus 75%. And it starts to get into differences in the scenario. Now, I want to make a comment. Dr. John Campbell, he's one of my favorite guys. I watch, at least in terms of coronavirus. I haven't had much time to watch him recently because I was eyeball deep in a lot of other stuff. But I did watch a lot of his stuff for a couple of months there. When I went running yesterday, I listened to his presentation yesterday, and he was talking about distancing and masks. He made a very good point and quoted some of the statistics about, what was it, 50 to 75% transmission rate breathing if you're 3 feet away or 1 meter away, dropping to less than 3% once you're 2 meters away or about 6 feet away. So that was very, very helpful. But when he was talking about masks, he kept bemoaning the fact there are no randomized clinical trials using masks. And this gets back to that comment about, well, why did they use hamsters? He said it again. He said it again. He said it at least 4 times. No, he thinks it's terrible that there are no randomized clinical trials for coronavirus transmission among humans using a mask. Well, part of my life, I've been faculty at Hopkins, and I did some significant research in terms of HIV transmission. And let me just ask you this. If you're developing a study, of course you can get funding. It's very important. However, consider this. So you're going to have 2 people. One of them say, okay, I'm going to wear a mask. The other one say, okay, I'm not going to wear a mask. And you're going to watch transmission rates, and it's going to be randomized. It's not going to be randomized. People are going to be very, very emotional about this. Therefore, people that think that it's an issue are going to use it. People that think that it isn't aren't. There's going to be no randomization in there. You know, part of randomization requires that you that you don't know, that the subject does not know whether they have the intervention or not. So for a whole bunch of reasons, I'm a big fan of Dr. John Campbell, but for a whole bunch of reasons, I don't think he thought it through when he kept fussing about there's no randomized clinical trials. Again, still a big fan. I just want to get that, maybe help decrease some misinformation. It's not that the research medical community is neglecting this critical issue. It's just that it's not going to be done. It's not possible. So next, why don't we take a look at a short video on the Hong Kong study claiming wearing a mask, reducing COVID transmission. Aspen, are you able to put that up there?
Well, I was mask or not to mask? That's the big debate. It still is now. There just hasn't been a definitive answer. Well, some scientists here in Hong Kong hope that their study using hamsters could change that. This scientific study offers evidence that masks could reduce non-contact transmission rates by up to 75%. So they use a surgical mask to create a barrier inside hamster cages, and that's what they found. Now, with countries lifting lockdowns in all 50 states, getting ready to reopen, this question of whether or not to require people to wear masks mask is a crucial one. And one of the scientists we talked to say that the world could look to Asia for lessons, and he's not the only one.
If you look at the situation of Hong Kong or other places in Asia where the population generally do wear a mask when they go into the community, then the transmission rate seems to be lower. I'm not saying that this is the only determinant, but this warrants further investigation as why the transmission rate remains quite low in the community.
I was in Europe last week and now I'm in Asia. There is a difference in attitudes towards masks, and experts we talked to say a lot of it is also cultural. Here in Hong Kong, for example, the terrifying memory of the 2003 SARS outbreak is still fresh in people's minds. I was here back then. People were scared. So the first news of the COVID-19 virus, it was a no-brainer for locals to go and get masks. They didn't want a repeat of 2003. Now in Europe, it's a different story. There really just isn't that same level of trust on the effectiveness of masks, but times are changing as more governments require people to wear them in public places. Even White House staff have been told to do so when 2 aides tested positive. And now we see Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau going to work with a mask on. Now the Hong Kong scientists here hope that their study would assuage critics, but they're keen to remind people that masks alone aren't enough, that social distancing and good hand hygiene must still be maintained. Allison?
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.
Cantor said once, it was hard to tell when we went from program into Q&A. That's the reason we set up that little divider, that Q&A section, James. As you might have guessed, we're into the Q&A section now. Question and answer. Dave Murphy, a friend of mine went into the ER this morning with a blood pressure of 225/115. Been after him to make some lifestyle changes. Maybe this will be the wake-up call that he needs. Unfortunately, too many of us need a wake-up call. I hope it is, Dave. I hope it does help. Dave sent us a chat. Thank you, Dave. I appreciate that. A super chat. And here's 3 or 4 different ways you can contribute if you'd like. Again, helping us get that information, helping us save lives, get information out to folks that that need this. You can typically extend your healthy life a decade or more just by doing the right things. You just have to have the knowledge, number one, and then the discipline to do it. That's what we're working on doing. Thank you so much, Dave, for helping. Looking forward to my consultation. Yes, Dave will be coming in to see us, or he and I will be seeing each other. Like 95% plus of my patients remotely. I really want to learn about what I can do to improve my health even further. And let me tell you this, you may think I've got it all wrapped up, I'm doing everything that I can do. I haven't met anybody, myself included, that fits that category. There's always something. Robert Simpson, good morning. Dave Murphy, 97% O2 saturation, oxygen sat, and 61 beats per minute. James Cantor, I take metformin ER. Do you know where I can find a list? People Pharmacy had a list this weekend, but just said metformin. My brand was safe. I don't know where the list is. I haven't. I just saw that a few hours ago and we were having our meeting. I was juggling our meeting with getting ready for this event. Got a lot of negative feedback from one of the members of my team. You can imagine, about dual tasking and juggling. So I don't have a list, James. As you saw, I was able to get the FDA announcement, and I can say it's the ER version, the extended release, but I don't know which ones. It looks like you saw some about your brand anyway. Dave Murphy, don't forget to like the video. I do appreciate that. When you like it, and again, just as an interesting twist for the people that unlike it, unlikes generate the algorithm as much as likes. I'm not inviting unlikes, but just making you aware. shares on social media are a big deal, and comments are as well. So thank you very much, Dave. I appreciate that. Thanks, Dave, for the reminder. Waiting to hear back from CardioRisk to find a CIMT in the area. I know that Todd and the CardioRisk folks were actually doing some CIMTs throughout the lockdown. Not a lot. Their volume went way down, just like everybody else's did. Our volume, by the way, just from a business perspective and an access to people perspective, we had one of our larger events scheduled for, what was it? Mid-April. It was going to be about 2 weeks before or after we got back from a trip. It was a cruise trip in China, and we were going to actually be in Wuhan. So obviously we didn't make that trip. And obviously from a business and access perspective, there are several hundred people that we were not able to get that message across to. Mark Bentley, who coordinated that event with me, he and I are talking about the potential of setting up maybe one or more webinar type of events for those. And I will tell you this, Dave, I know that Todd and Heidi are getting back into full swing now with the reopening. So you should be able to find something. Dave says, I know of 2 people that have died on the treadmill doing a stress test. I refuse to do one. Well, I wish more people knew about the downside of a stress test, Dave. That's, again, part of that message we're trying to get out there. And again, thanks for the contribution on helping us do that. Karen Black, good morning. Do you have any suggestions for an accurate blood glucose? I'm assuming BG means blood glucose meter. We have Bayer Contour, which is not the greatest. Precision Extra, I don't know about Precision Extra. Freestyle Libre is a good one. Well, now Freestyle Libre, that means you're doing the button with the CGM. Now, CGM, continuous glucose monitoring, any one number is not as reliable as a finger stick. At least that's what they tell you. And clearly don't base your insulin treatment based on that. But you can, it tells you, it actually even gives you hints when it's questioning its own value. I was on with a patient earlier this week who's full-blown diabetic. He's known that he's had diabetes for years. Had a bypass, has been a patient of mine, and he was saying, man, I love the Libre. It just gives me so much more information. People don't realize what it was like back in the old days, pre-CGM. Anyhow, I'm digressing into the Libre story. So here's what I would recommend, Karen. The Freestyle finger stick is also a very good product. So if you want to get, and I use the Keto Mojo. I don't know the statistics for quality on the Keto Mojo sugar sticks, but I do know that for what, $25, you can get a Freestyle Libre finger stick kit. Here's what's expensive. It's the strips. And that's what happens. If you get on most of the really good finger stick blood glucose meters, the strips are what cost a lot of money. It's like the old razor thing where the handles are really cheap, but they only fit their razors in the razor insert, and the razor head insert is what's expensive. Same thing with the glucose thing. There's another fellow, I'm blanking on the name. It's the father of diabetes self-care. He was an engineer. His wife was an ER doc. He got like a very early blood glucose monitor, and now he's well known. I've done a couple of videos on him. He's got a great book on diabetes self-care. I'm sure that somebody out there knows who I'm talking about. Remind me, he's got a good, the reason I'm bringing that up is this. He's got a great section on, and he keeps up with it, on the sensitivity, specificity, the quality of blood glucose meters. So it's a great question, Karen. well, I'm not able to answer it completely, as you could see. Can't even remember the name of maybe the best resource in that area, but I will hopefully later. And somebody probably a few minutes down is giving me that name right now as we speak. Joseph Page, a mask surely must trap larger virus containing droplets and reduce distant spread for anything ejected from the mouth and nose. Not perfect, but much better than nothing. Here's a tweak I would recommend for you. On most masks, what you'll see, and I don't have that on this mask either, here's where the problem is with most masks. It has to do with, you see this area right here? Let's take that off first. Yeah, you see this area? What you want is a mask that has a wire insert right here, impregnated, so you can squeeze that and decrease that gap. You know, they say that it helps protect others from your voice, I mean, from your emissions, but it doesn't protect you so much. And I think this is probably one of the major reasons. So hopefully the mask industry will wrap its head around that issue. I know it's a big deal in terms of production to start figuring out a way to get that wire insert in there. It's a standard for a lot of, you know, hospital grade masks, surgical masks, but it's just not there on your routine mask that's coming out. If you can find that, use that. Obviously, we haven't found it either. Karen Black, also any suggestions on how to keep the Freestyle Libre sensor on for someone who works out? Twice it has fallen off my husband in a day or so or less. You know, I had a couple of those fall off, but here's the thing, Karen. I work out a lot. I'll do like hour and a half, 2 hour run out in the heat, significant hard runs, high intensity intervals, swimming, sauna. All of that was before coronavirus, because we just moved a half a block away from a great YMCA, and I was able to benefit from it for about a year, and then coronavirus happened. I had a couple of them that came off. Here's another thing that happened. I was tending to put the thing on the outside, and I bumped into the shower door a couple of times and knocked those off. But this thing is built to where most of them are going to do well. Now, I will say this. If you look on Amazon, they do have yet another item built specifically for that. It's a little cloth insert with with more glue on one side. So look on Amazon, look for that specific thing, and you should be able to find something. Dave Murphy. Karen Black, I used a 406 glucose ketone meter, just had an OGTT, and my AM 406 was within 6 points of my fasting draw for the OGTT. Now, let me say this. In my standard labs that I get with patients, one of the things I get is a metabolic panel. It's a 16 or 24 component panel, and it routinely has a fasting glucose in one of those. The other thing that we get, obviously, in everybody is an OGTT with insulin response to the OGTT. Here's why I bring that up. These are both at the same time in the same patient being drawn by the same venipuncturist at a reference lab. We're talking Quest here. We're not talking Libre or Freestyle, you know, finger stick. And we'll typically see at least a 6-point difference, quite often 10 points or more. So again, hopefully that helps you. I usually look for that in my patients, because glucose monitoring is such a big deal, and so many people think, dang, this is wrong. My Libre is routinely 6 points off. Quest is routinely 6 points off. I'm not saying that Libres are perfect. They are not. They are, it's not the purpose of a Libre to give you the exact right number every time. It's the purpose of a Libre to help you watch your patterns and your responses to food, your responses to exercise, your response to a daily diurnal sleep-wake pattern. But again, just the point is, even with a reference lab, you tend to get at least a 6-point difference. Danger 619, danger, no mass salts. Don't understand that at all. Maybe a typo, danger. Karen Black, thanks, Dave. Good info. We had, we're getting a lot of comments, so we had some, the thing jumped. Robert Simpson, since these protests have been going on, people have pretty much forgotten about the virus and continue to gather in large crowds with a lot not wearing masks. Yeah, I saw a headline this morning. I think it was Minneapolis Hospital is bracing for a major COVID-19 outbreak there because of this issue, driven by the protests. And Janice was talking about how, yep, each side of the political aisles are going to blame the other side when this happens. And each side of the political debate about distancing versus no distancing is going to blame the other, and everybody's going to blame somebody else. Meanwhile, a lot of people are going to get infected. Bart Robinson, protesters gathering close to each other, but I can't get a haircut or go to the gym. It's ridiculous. Well, Bart, it is ridiculous. I will say this, and pardon me for rubbing this in, Bart, but I don't know if you've noticed, my hair is much, much shorter. I had a custom cut by my new high-end barber. Her name is Janice Derrickson. It's my wife. I bought some clippers on Amazon. She agreed. I tell you, she scared the dickens out of me. She stood in front of me. We put a chair out in the backyard, and I sat on the chair, and she stood right in front of me with those clippers and started messing around with it and just started laughing. She said, I have no idea how to do this. Obviously made me nervous, but I'm totally comfortable with what she accomplished there. So Amazon, 30 bucks, maybe as high as 60 bucks, but you can get some really good clippers there. I'm very happy. Dave Ferguson, approximately 20,000 new cases of COVID-19 in the US every day. How are these people getting the virus? Are we doing case reports for a random sample? Were they not wearing masks, not social distancing? David, I agree with you. You know, what can I say? I was talking with James West. He's my partner in some of the return to work activities for these large employers, and he was saying, look, this whole issue, there is no interest, there's no focus on trying to save lives preventively with COVID-19 right now. It's all a political issue about either, you know what, unless I'm in a nursing home, it's not my problem. I'm just going to jump out there. I don't say that from a critical perspective. Again, our society is going to make, you know, we're a democracy. So we make decisions significantly different from someplace like China. And I'd much rather be here than in China. I couldn't take Big Brother, the government, making all my decisions for me, even with the risks that some of this creates in terms of times like these when you need cooperation to manage death rates. And you raise a lot of questions. I mean, here's the other thing, David. If you take, I mean, one of the things that led to, obviously, the major thing maybe that led to reopening was the economy and many people's interpretation of it. One of the other things that led to it was this perceived thing that the curve was slowing down and flattening in the US. It's because that curve was being driven by New York. And yes, it was slowing down and flattening in New York. You take New York out of the rest of the country, And the statistics were clear. The rest of the country has been on an uptick from day one. Never slowed down, just increased. Karen Black, some people wear their masks only on their mouth and not on their nose. That makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? No, I really don't feel comfortable with that. I don't either. It's like, what good is it? I started to make a political comment. Not going to do that. Dave Murphy, we haven't seen Janice in a while. Tell her we miss her. I will tell her that you miss her, and you can tell her when you see her soon. I remember she was asking, wanting to find out a little bit more about what's going on with your upcoming consult. I'm a little bit reticent to tell her anything right now. She was the one that was complaining that I was multitasking this morning when we were having our management meeting. And, you know, we're an older couple and we have grumpy sessions with each other. And that was one of them. Ken Patu, I took a COVID-19 antibody year this morning. I think maybe you mean test. What are the implications of it coming back positive? Assume immunity? I wouldn't, unless you're feeling very, very lucky. You know, the thing is, Ken, they've already found that a lot of the tests, the antibody tests that came out, had a lot of problems. But even in a test with good numbers, like, you know, 85, 95, 90% sensitivity, specificity, and I'm not going to get into the technical details on what those are. But good test statistics, a good test. Even with those, if the prevalence in the population is low, as in what it is with COVID-19, 2%, 2.5%, less, maybe a little more in some areas, you get a positive test. What's the probability that it's a true positive versus a false positive? In many cases, it's going to be half and half. So unless you're feeling really lucky, I would not just get an antibody test, get a positive antibody test and think, oh, I'm good to go. I'm immune to this at this point. Forget all the questions about whether antibody truly confers immunity for COVID-19. Just think about what I just said. The probability of a false positive is going to be very high until we get an unusually good kind of test. Now, there is work going on with those tests. We're working with a couple of people. Up in Harvard, they're working on IgA, IgM, IgG antibody profiles. David Vigorous, Dr. Vigorous, who's Vanderbilt trained, been faculty at Vanderbilt. His group is, and he's doing some work in Texas right now. His group is working on an antibody titer. So as we get better, and I'm guessing that at some point we're probably going to end up with a combination of the two, where you get not only a profile, IgG, IgA, IgM, but also a titer in each of those areas. Titer meaning the level of antibody. Once you start getting that level of test, then it tells you a lot more. And that would not be the first time. We used to do that with, we'll still do that with things like hepatitis. Have done that in the past on a routine basis with syphilis. There's other tests, other diseases where we've had to do that. I expect this will be one of them. So great question, Ken. And again, don't assume that it means you're immune unless you just feel very lucky. AAPI, masks are dangerous. Oxygen intake is reduced wearing a mask. Well, I don't think oxygen reduction from a mask is a danger for your vast majority of people. I'm sure there are some exceptions, but I'm gonna zip on. Joe Riley, mask. I will never be killed by a virus I didn't catch. That's a good point. 96%. Well, I will tell you this, by the way, and I suspect it might be because of the gaps that I was showing you. The masks, there's more evidence that the masks are protecting others from you than protecting you from others. But still, there's no question, there's evidence piling up that masks can help. So thank you, Joe. Somebody gave us Joe gave us a $5 super chat. Somebody else just gave us a $10 super chat. Karen Black, thank you, Karen. My husband and I will see you on the June 30 insulin resistance Q&A seminar. Karen, I am so excited to hear you sign up, and thank you so much for sharing that. Again, that's a great way. As we've mentioned, seeing me, the full complete evaluation one-on-one can be expensive, but these webinars are a very, very cost-effective way of filling in some of the gaps that we know over 2/3 of primary care docs have. I'm not blaming primary care docs. I have spent a lifetime career of recruiting, managing, directing, managing the performance of docs, medical directors. I've been a career chief medical officer. So docs are just like other humans. They tend to do the best they can with what they have. Pardon me, I'm having a little bit of a scratchy throat. I don't think it's from an infectious cause. I certainly hope not. No fever, no other things, but it's been a little bit, as the spring has continued to get cranked up here. I've always tended to have very bad spring allergies, and in fact, at this point, they're far better than they used to be. Thank you again, Karen, and looking forward to meeting you and your husband. Bart Robinson, I get a mild headache and dizziness every time I wear a mask when food shopping, and I'm constantly adjusting and touching my face. Yeah, I understand that. It's not easy. Our son works in the meat shop at Kroger, and for a while there, they started with masks, and anytime somebody puts on a mask, it does impact you. I'm not saying it's dangerous. I'm not sure that I can go that far, but there is an adjustment factor in terms of getting used to having a mask on a regular basis. It does impact your ventilation. D. Crispin 1, here and watching. Going back to the start of the video. Thank you, D. Crispin. I appreciate that. Appreciate your interest. Joe Riley. Bernstein. Thank you, Joe. I knew somebody was going to come up with that name. And James Cantor is telling me Dr. Richard Bernstein. Yeah. So Richard Bernstein was a diabetic, fairly brittle diabetic, in his 30s? More of an engineer type. His wife was an ER doc. And he's in his 80s now. So this was over 50 years ago. He lived about one neighborhood down from me, but we didn't overlap. I lived in Larchmont. We lived in Larchmont, gosh, I don't know, decades after he was in the next, I think it was Mamaroneck. But anyway, his wife was an ER doc, and one day she brought home this 7-pound gizmo. The gizmo was actually a way to do a fingerstick blood test. He started doing fingerstick blood tests, and he started doing research on himself, and he started submitting them for medical publication. Well, the medical journals wouldn't accept it because he wasn't a doc. So what did he do? He went to med school. And again, he has since become the father of diabetes self-care. And he's got some great books in the area. Again, great resource. One of them, for example, being what are the best fingerstick blood glucose devices at this point available now. Thanks, James and Joe. Robert Simpson, I would think that people with no masks yelling and screaming during protests would transmit a lot of drops to others. Robert, I would too. And you know what? I get tired with all the politics. Dennis Bolanos, is it recommended to wear an R95 mask given that N95 are reserved for healthcare workers? I don't think I'm going to be able to answer that, Dennis. I'm sorry. I think it's a good question. Good point, Robert. Yes, it is a good point. Karen Black, that $10 super chat. Thank you so much. Another super chat, Alan Cruz, $4.99. Thank you so much. In Idaho, the prevalence is low, driving poor mask and hygiene, which will lull them into bad habits, which, when summer travel brings, is bad. I agree. And, you know, here's the thing. By definition, I'm a channel which is giving updates on COVID-19 coronavirus, and you guys are watching that channel. So I think most of us that you're going to see are folks that have similar views that are saying, folks, this is a real issue. There are things that we can do to protect our health and the health of others. I don't have to tell you, there's a whole lot of people who say, as I said before, they don't care. They think it's been overblown, et cetera, et cetera. And in fact, for a while there, we were getting some bombing, comment bombs like others. They were coming in. I think most of that has mostly died down. Thank you, Alan, for the super chat. Thank you for the comment. Bart Robinson, okay, if I'm officially jealous, your wife did a decent job cutting. Oh, okay, I'm officially jealous. Your wife did a decent, she did a great job. I told her I couldn't believe it, especially the way she was acting. I think she wanted to get my goat, and she did. She scared the dickens out of me. I thought I was going to have, but yeah, I'm happy with it too. And it feels a lot better, especially when I'm out running in the sun. Thank you, Bart. Alan Cruz, it looks like maybe another super chat. Thank you so much. Again, we appreciate it. Your BG pattern and relative level is way more important than the absolute precision. Absolutely. Thank you so much. I could not thank you so much, not only for the super chat, but for that comment. Here's the sort of thing that people find once they start actually using something like a Libre. And by the way, we have services where insurance typically won't pay for Libres unless you've got massive problems with your diabetes, which to me is too late. I think people need to start learning this when they're pre-diabetic, when they still have time to prevent the worst problems. The FDA saw in their infinite wisdom, pardon the sarcasm, that Libre and the Dexcom 6 needed to be prescription. I disagree, but you know what? I'm not a lawbreaker. I'll follow the law. However, I am very liberal about providing the Libre, and we set up a service. If you have a question about, if you'd like to get the Libre and you can't get your doc to do it, you'd like for us to do it, we'll be happy to do it. We're licensed in almost 50 states. And for most of them, we have solutions for the others as well. We've got patients really all over the world, and feel very strongly about about providing access to Libre and Libre interpretation. So again, call 859-721-1414. That's 859-721-1414 if you need help on getting access to a Libre prescription. Similar to with metformin as well. Here's some things that people typically find out. One of the things they find out is that their blood sugar tends to go low. There's more diurnal effect than they thought. It goes low between midnight and 4 or 5 in the morning. Then it starts going up as a result of cortisol. Our cortisol tends to peak at 4, 5, 6 in the morning, and guess what? That causes the dawn effect. Now that's interesting. What's also interesting is when people find that they've lost that decrease. I personally think that it's like high blood pressure. It's a problem if you don't get a decrease in blood pressure while you're asleep in the wee hours of the morning. I think it's also a problem if you don't get that decrease in blood sugar. Another thing that people tend to find out is that, look, if I go on a carb vacation, I have a pizza or a beer, with my kids, and it's not a low carb version. I can decrease generically, you can decrease your that predicted spike just by taking a gentle walk. Something where you can just walk with your spouse or a friend, walk for 20 minutes, and quite often you can just take the top right off of that spike. There's so many things that you can find out. You can find out that, you know what, some people spike with lentils, others don't have a problem at all. There's just so much that you can learn, that you need to learn using that. So, Joe Riley, thumbs up. Yes, please give a thumbs up. Any reactions that you can give, tell that algorithm that this is worthwhile information, and encourage it to send it out to other folks. Chuck K, I have an OGTT scheduled for Friday. I was looking at old videos on cholesterol and missed the shaky paper. You know what? I do too sometimes. Unfortunately, and I look for it on the YouTube live events when I can do a shaky paper type thing. You know, I have a friend that was all the time talking about how in the heck could I do shaky paper? Could I actually show something when I was behind the paper? And here's the trick. I can see the screen because I'm screencasting. So I can look at the paper and then move my pointer that way. Thank you, Chuck. I missed the shaky paper too. I appreciate the comment. Alan Cruz, $9.99. Another super chat button, a contribution. Thank you so much. Again, as you've seen, it's not just me. I'm retired the third time, and actually, I have to say it, I'm consulting again with a couple of different companies. One is K Health. It's a telemedicine group, and the other is trying to get people back to work. But we've got Clyde and Aspen, who's co-hosting today, running the technical side of this stuff, and Josie and John, all helping with the videos. Actually, we've got a great video coming out on bergamet. And if you don't know what bergamet is, now I didn't say bergamot, I said bergamet. If you don't know what that is, I think we're gonna get it out this coming Friday. We are upping our game in terms of interest levels, video interest inserts, things like that, to make the videos not so bone dry, boring. You'll see that within a week. Then we've got Michelle, who manages the patient care side and has recently stepped into managing projects within projects, you know, getting all of those backlogged pin-up webinars out there. Of course, we've got Janice. Janice has got more doctorates than I do. I mean, in just, you know, to your comment, Dave Murphy, I feel like the highest and best use of my training is for me to be an assistant to the health coach. And that's really what happens. I'm able to do, you know, to do prescriptions, of course, but I'm also able to do prescriptions for things like Freestyle Libre. I'm able to get labs which help people understand exactly what's going on within their body. Suddenly now you get a focus, you get a dashboard on your health. And once I can give you that information, then you start working with somebody like Janice, who says, here's how to fit all of that information and what we know we need to do next into your complicated lifestyle. I mean, you have work you have to do, you have family and kids you need to take care of, you have interests and hobbies, and you have likes and dislikes, and you know, you've got to put all that together with a lifestyle that makes sense. So again, we've got a large team. We just we've got a Cindy that just came on to help us understand how to present our information to folks. So we've got quite a few people, and these contributions do make a big, big difference. Thank you so much again, Alan, and the others that have done super chats for today. I'm retired also. Plenty of time to learn. Good for you. And you ought to come join us. We've had plenty of volunteers working with us, and come on in. The water's fine. Dave Murphy, Michelle and Lori are great. Thanks to both of them for their hard work. I would agree 100%. And it is very hard work. One of the, I have certain skills and I have certain weaknesses. Just ask Janice. But I mean, I'll also tell you, one of my biggest weak spots is that I struggle mightily in terms of narrowing down our focus. And that creates a huge burden for Michelle, for me, for Janice, for Lori, for other members of the team. So again, they do carry a lot of water, a lot of work. Joe, I don't understand the question mark. Alan Cruz, so the health coach is the healthcare integrator who uses the experts and resources. Exactly. That's right. And as you begin to think of it, they're the person that actually helps you coordinate and help. The reality is this: there's nothing that a doctor can prescribe, no surgery, no procedure that a doctor can do that impacts your health as much as the decisions that you make on a second by second, minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day, month by month, week by week, year, decade by decade basis. Well, yes, I can help you get technical information regarding your blood studies. I can help with recommendations regarding supplements. I can help with prescription medications. But the key thing is helping you understand how to coordinate your lifestyle. Maybe that was the question that you had, Joe, when I brought up my highest and best uses as an assistant to the health coach. It's kind of weird, isn't it? Bart Robinson, thanks for another great chat, Doctor. Thank you, Bart. Thank you for your interest. And thank you, insulin meter. Oh, yeah, it's a good question, Joe. I haven't done any further investigation. We did some early investigation on the group that came out with the insulin meter. I think it's going to take some time before we see what they actually the quality of what they're actually producing. Thank you so much, and we will see you guys Wednesday. Take a look at Friday's video. Sorry, I asked that. Well.